I still remember the exact moment Chris wouldn't let it go. "You're disappearing, man," he said through the phone, his voice cutting through the noise of the bar where he was hanging out, like actually fading away. "When's the last time you did something that wasn't work, sleep, repeat?" I was lying on my couch in my cramped studio apartment, staring at water stains on the ceiling that looked like continents I'd never visit. The pizza box from 3 nights ago sat on the counter. My work boots were caked with dried mud by the door. This was my life at 29. Wake up at 5:30, chug instant coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, drive my beat-up Chevy to whatever job site needed wiring done that day, pull cables through walls, connect circuits, come home covered in dust and bits of insulation, microwave something, sleep, do it again. I'm Jake, by the way, an electrician in Portland, Oregon. Not the exciting kind you see in movies who saves the day by cutting the right wire, just the regular kind who makes sure your lights turn on when you flip the switch. "I'm fine," I told Chris, which was my standard answer for everything. "You're not fine. You haven't been on a date in, 3 years?" "Almost 3, I corrected him. "See, that's the problem right there. You're keeping track of how long you've been alone like it's some kind of record to be proud of." He wasn't wrong. The last real date I'd been on ended with the woman asking about my 5-year plan. I remember shrugging because, honestly, my plan was to make rent next month and maybe fix the weird rattling sound my truck was making. She'd given me this look like I was a house with a cracked foundation she'd have to renovate from scratch. Too much work, not worth it. After that, I just stopped trying. "I've got a neighbor," Chris continued, and I could hear the scheming in his voice. "She's nice, normal, works at that rehab center on Morrison Street. Been through some stuff, but who hasn't, right, Chris? I don't need you setting me up. 2 months of bar tabs. I'll cover them if it goes badly." I sat up. 2 months. If you hate it, if it's awkward, if she turns out to collect human teeth or whatever, I'll buy your drinks for 8 solid weeks. But you have to actually show up and give it an honest shot. 1 coffee, 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. The thing about Chris is he knows exactly when I'm out of excuses. We'd worked together on a big commercial building project 5 years back, spent 8 months running conduit through concrete and talking about everything from sports to why relationships never seem to work out the way you hoped. He'd been there when I went through my last breakup, when Jenna told me I was emotionally unavailable because I didn't want to argue about where we'd be in 10 years. I just wanted to enjoy where we were right then. But that wasn't enough for her. It never was for anyone. "Fine," I heard myself say. 1 coffee, but when this crashes and burns, you're buying top shelf stuff, not the cheap beer." Chris laughed. Deal. Saturday afternoon, that coffee place on Burnside with the weird wooden tables. 2. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. I'd show up and she'd take one look at me, dirty work clothes, calloused hands, truck that needed a wash, and decide she could do better. Or we'd sit there in painful silence, both watching the clock, counting down the minutes until we could politely escape. Or worst of all, it would go okay. Just okay enough that I'd start hoping, and then she'd ghost me like all the others, when she realized I was exactly who I appeared to be, a guy with no big dreams, no fancy career, just someone trying to get through each day without falling behind. Saturday came faster than I wanted. I spent Friday night actually cleaning my apartment for the first time in weeks, which was stupid because she wasn't coming over, but doing something, anything, made me feel slightly less nervous. I washed my truck too, scrubbing at mud that had been there so long it had practically become part of the paint job, picked out my least wrinkled shirt, found jeans without any holes, small victories. The coffee shop was one of those places that tries really hard to look like it's not trying at all. Reclaimed wood everywhere, mismatched furniture that probably cost more than my monthly rent, light bulbs hanging on long cords from the ceiling like they'd forgotten to finish installing them. It smelled incredible though, dark roasted coffee mixing with cinnamon and something buttery from the pastry case. I got there 15 minutes early because showing up late to anything makes my skin crawl. Years of job sites where being late means losing work had trained that into me permanently. I grabbed a table by the window where I could see the door. Strategic positioning. If things went south, I had a clear path to the exit, and my truck was parked right outside. I pulled out my phone and pretended to be busy reading something important, but really I was just staring at the same news article about traffic construction downtown, not absorbing a single word. My coffee sat untouched in front of me, getting cold. Other people came and went, a couple arguing quietly in the corner about whose turn it was to call someone's mother, a guy with a laptop taking up a whole table, typing like he was writing the most important email in human history. The barista called out drink orders in that sing-song voice they all seem to have. "Caramel macchiato for Trevor, large Americano." The door opened and I looked up out of habit. Not her, just some teenager with headphones. Opened again, a mom with 2 kids who immediately started fighting which pastry they wanted. I checked my phone, 1:58. Maybe she wouldn't show. Maybe Chris had made the whole thing up as some weird social experiment. Maybe she'd looked me up somehow, seen my truck or my apartment or my complete lack of anything impressive and decided to save us both the trouble. Then at exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened again, and I knew immediately it was her. Something about the way she paused just inside, taking a breath like she was preparing for something difficult. She looked to be in her early 30s, with short auburn hair that was neat and practical. She wore a navy cardigan over a cream-colored shirt and dark jeans. Her posture was careful, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible in a room full of people. Our eyes met across the coffee shop, and for a second I thought about looking away, pretending I hadn't seen her, giving her an out. But I didn't. I raised my hand in a small wave. She gave a tiny nod and started walking toward my table, weaving between chairs and other customers. With each step closer, I could see more details. The carefulness in how she moved, the way her hands were tucked partially into her cardigan sleeves, the expression on her face that was trying to be a smile, but was really more like armor. "Hi," she said when she reached the table. Her voice was soft but steady. "You must be Jake." "Yeah, that's me," I replied, standing up quickly and extending my hand. "Ava, right?" We shook hands briefly. Her grip was firm, but she pulled away fast. Like touching a stranger for even that long was uncomfortable. She sat down across from me and immediately started fiddling with the edge of her cardigan sleeve. "Thanks for agreeing to this," she said, glancing around the coffee shop like she was checking exits too. "Chris can be pretty persistent." "He bribed me with 2 months of bar tabs," I admitted, trying to lighten the mood. She smiled a little at that, a real one this time. "He told me he'd stop bugging me about getting out more if I just tried once. Guess we're both here under duress." "The best foundation for any relationship," I joked, and immediately regretted it, because who says the word relationship at the start of a first date? But she laughed quietly. "Should we get you a coffee?" I asked, grateful for something practical to do. "I can grab it. What do you want?" "Just a regular coffee, black, nothing fancy. I work with people in pain all day. I like things simple and straightforward." She said it matter-of-factly, but there was weight behind the words. While I went to order her coffee, I snuck glances back at the table. She sat very still, hands wrapped around herself, looking out the window at the street. When I came back with her drink, she thanked me quietly and wrapped both hands around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "So," Chris said, "you work at a rehab center?" I started falling into the standard first aid script. "Yeah, I'm a physical therapist. Mostly trauma recovery cases, people who've been in accidents or fires, helping them regain mobility and strength." She took a sip of coffee. "What about you?" Chris mentioned electrical work. I nodded. "Nothing exciting. I wire up buildings, fix electrical problems, make sure things don't catch fire or electrocute anyone. It's steady work." "Sounds important, though. People need electricity." "People need physical therapy, too. Probably more than they need another strip mall wired up." We fell into that awkward rhythm of first dates, trading basic information like we were filling out forms for each other. "Where did you grow up?" "Right here in the Portland area." "Any siblings?" "One brother. He moved to Seattle for tech work." "Favorite food?" "I don't know. Pizza, probably. Normal stuff. Safe stuff." But I kept noticing little things. The way she never fully relaxed in her chair. How her hands stayed hidden in her sleeves, even while holding the coffee cup. The careful way she chose her words, like she was constantly editing herself. 20 minutes in, we'd cover jobs, families, neighborhoods, the usual topics. The conversation was fine. Not terrible, but not great either. Just two strangers being polite to each other because a mutual friend thought it was a good idea. Then something shifted. Ava sat down her coffee cup and looked directly at me for the first time since we'd sat down. Really looked at me, like she was trying to decide something important. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure, anything." "Why did you say yes to this?" "Really, not the bar tab thing. What made you actually show up?" The question caught me off guard because it was real, not more small talk about favorite movies or weekend plans. I thought about giving her some easy answer, but something about the way she asked made me want to be honest. "I guess I got tired of my own excuses," I said slowly. "I've been telling myself for 3 years that I'm fine alone, that it's easier this way, that I don't need anyone. And maybe that's true, but Chris was right about one thing. I am disappearing. Just fading into this routine where nothing ever changes and nothing ever hurts, but nothing ever feels good either. So I figured, what's the worst that happens? We have an awkward hour and I go back to my apartment and my boring life. At least I tried." She nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. "I have a similar reason for being here, except my excuse has been 5 years, not 3. 5 years since a date. 5 years since I let anyone see the real me." She pulled her hands back from the coffee cup and placed them flat on the table, still covered by her cardigan sleeves. Her fingers were tapping lightly, nervous energy she couldn't quite hide. "I'm going to do something now," she said, her voice changing, becoming more direct. "And after I do it, you're probably going to want to leave. Most people do. I just want to get it over with early so we both stop wasting time."
My heart started beating faster. "Okay," I said, having no idea what was coming. Ava looked around the coffee shop quickly, then back at me. She reached for the sleeve of her cardigan with her opposite hand. "I should probably just show you." Slowly, carefully, she pulled back the navy fabric, revealing her forearm. The skin was covered in scars. Not small ones you'd barely notice, but thick raised lines of scar tissue, patterns of burns that twisted from her wrist up her arm, disappearing under the fabric near her elbow. The scars were pink and white against her skin, permanent marks that told a story of serious pain. Some areas looked smooth and tight, others were bumpy and uneven. It was immediately clear these weren't from some minor kitchen accident. This was major trauma. The coffee shop noise seemed to fade into background static. I could hear the espresso machine hissing somewhere behind me, people talking at other tables, a chair scraping against the floor, but it all felt distant and muffled. My eyes stayed on her arm, not because I was staring rudely, but because she was showing me something incredibly personal, and looking away felt like rejection. "This is what I meant about the real me," Ava said, her voice calm and matter-of-fact, like she'd rehearsed this speech before. "I was in a fire 5 years ago. Third-degree burns, skin grafts, the whole nightmare. This is my left arm and shoulder. The scars go further, but I'm not doing a full show and tell in a coffee shop." She left her arm exposed on the table between us, vulnerable and honest. "Here's the thing I learned pretty quickly after I healed enough to start dating again. No one will ever love me. Not with these. I've tried hiding them with long sleeves and makeup and scarves, but eventually people see. And when they do, something changes. They get this look in their eyes, pity mixed with discomfort. They start making excuses. They stop calling. So I've started doing this instead, just putting it out there immediately. Saves everyone time." She looked at me, waiting, testing. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes held challenge and resignation mixed together. This was the moment where most people probably said something polite and found a reason to check their phone, to remember a sudden appointment, to leave money on the table and disappear forever. I realized my hands had moved across the table without me consciously deciding to do it. My fingers were near her exposed arm, not quite touching. "Can I?" I asked quietly. She looked confused. "Can you what? Can I pull your sleeve back down?" Her confusion deepened. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I don't think you should have to sit here feeling exposed and uncomfortable just to test whether I'm worth your time." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "So you're leaving?" "No," I said firmly. "I am staying. I'm here to stay, actually. And I think if I got up and walked out right now, that's something I'd regret for the rest of my life." For several seconds, Ava just stared at me like I was speaking a different language. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I gently took the edge of her cardigan sleeve and pulled it back down, covering the scars again. Not because they bothered me or because I wanted to hide them, but because the way she'd exposed herself felt like she was accepting something painful as inevitable, and I wanted her to know it didn't have to be that way. Not with me. "I don't understand," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saw them. You saw what I look like. Why would you stay?" I leaned back in my chair, trying to figure out how to put complicated feelings into simple words. "My dad used to work on old cars," I started, which seemed random, but stay with me. "He'd buy these beat-up trucks that other people had given up on, and he'd spend months fixing them in our garage. I remember asking him why he bothered, why he didn't just buy something new and perfect. And he said something I never forgot. He said, the perfect-looking things are boring, because you never learn their story. But the broken things, the ones with dents and rust and history, those are interesting. Those teach you something." Ava was listening intently, her hand now resting on her covered arm. "You think I'm an old truck?" she asked, and there was the tiniest hint of humor in her voice. "I think you're someone who's been through something terrible and came out the other side still trying, still showing up to awkward coffee dates, still working a job helping other people heal. That's not broken. That's the opposite of broken." She looked down at her coffee, and I saw her jaw clench like she was fighting back emotion. When she looked back up, her eyes were shiny, but no tears fell. "People don't usually react this way," she said softly. "How do they usually react?" "They try to be nice about it. They say supportive things like, 'You're so brave,' or 'That must have been hard.' Then they find reasons to end the date early."
They text later saying they don't think it's a good match, or they just ghost completely. I've learned that initial kindness doesn't mean much. It's what happens after, in the days and weeks that follow, that shows the truth. Then I guess you'll have to wait and see what happens in the days and weeks that follow. I said, because I meant what I said. I'm here to stay. We sat in silence for a moment, but it was different than before. The tension had shifted. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was real. No more small talk about jobs and neighborhoods. We jumped straight past all of that into something deeper. "Do you want to know what happened?" Ava asked, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "In the fire, I mean, the full story?" "Only if you want to tell it," I replied. "I'm not going anywhere." She took a slow breath, organizing her thoughts. It was 5 years ago. I was 26, living in this old apartment building downtown. the kind with character, which really means outdated wiring and creaky floors, but I liked it. I was alone that night, just me in my apartment. Her voice was steady, like she told the story enough times that the edges weren't quite so sharp anymore. It was late October. I'd spent the day working at the rehab center, came home tired. I went to bed around 10:30 because I had clients scheduled early the next morning. She paused, took a sip of coffee. Around 1:30 in the morning, the fire alarm went off. These alarms went off constantly in that building for random reasons. Burnt toast, someone's shower steam, whatever. So at first, I wasn't worried. I just laid there, annoyed, waiting for it to stop. But then I smelled smoke. Real smoke, not just someone's cooking. The coffee shop continued around us. Someone laughed at another table. The espresso machine beeped. But I was completely focused on Ava, on the story she was trusting me with. The fire started in the apartment below mine. Electrical problem, they figured out later. Old building, old wiring, just waiting for something to go wrong. It spread fast, incredibly fast. By the time I got out of my bedroom, the hallway was already filling with smoke. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup. We sat there without talking for what felt like forever. Not the kind of quiet where you're scrambling for something to say, just the kind where words would have gotten in the way. The coffee shop sounds came back slowly. Someone laughed at the table behind us. The coffee machine made its usual whooshing noise. A spoon clinked against a cup somewhere. Ava stared at her coffee like it held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. I gave her time because pushing felt wrong. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were different now, softer maybe, but still careful. "You really want to know everything?" she asked. It sounded like she was giving me one more chance to leave before things got heavier. "Yeah," I said. No fancy words, just honest. "If you want to tell me." She nodded slowly. The heat hit me first when I opened my bedroom door, like opening an oven, but the whole hallway was the oven. Smoke everywhere, thick and black. I couldn't see more than a few feet. I tried to get to the apartment door, but flames were already eating through the hallway. The wood was all black and orange and falling apart. I reached for the door handle anyway, and that's when my arm hit the burning frame. Just brushed against it, but it was enough. Ava stopped and looked at her covered sleeve. The pain was like nothing I'd felt before, sharp and deep and hot all at the same time. But something in my brain just said, move. So I moved, got to a window, broke it with a chair, and crawled out onto the fire escape. Firefighters showed up maybe 5 minutes later, but it felt like hours. Her voice got quieter. I was in the hospital for 2 months. The burns covered most of my left arm and part of my shoulder, 3rd degree in some spots. That means all the layers of skin were gone. They had to take skin from my leg to graft onto my arm. Then infection started. My body kept rejecting the grafts. I had 4 surgeries total. Physical therapy after that was worse than the fire in some ways. Every movement felt like being burned all over again. It took more than a year before I could lift my arm above my head without crying. The coffee shop felt too bright suddenly, too normal for this kind of story. "What about after?" I asked gently. "When you could finally go home?" She gave a small smile, but it wasn't happy. Going home was weird because I didn't have a home to go back to anymore. The apartment was gone. Everything I owned. Photo albums, my books, my clothes, furniture, all of it, just smoke and ash. I stayed with an aunt for a while, but that was hard. She meant well, but she looked at me like I was broken glass, like she might shatter if she said the wrong thing. Ava picked up her coffee cup, but didn't drink from it, just held it. The hardest part wasn't even the pain or the scars. It was looking in the mirror. I avoided mirrors for almost 2 months. Nurses would try to hand me one and I'd turn away. Finally, one of them, this older woman named Beth, she just put a mirror in my lap and left the room, so I had to look. And when I did, I didn't recognize myself. The scars were so big and twisted and red. They looked angry, like they were still burning. I tried makeup later, but you can't cover raised skin. It just makes it look worse. Eventually, I stopped trying to hide them from myself. But hiding them from everyone else felt necessary. Every time someone stared on the bus or in a store, it reminded me of everything I'd lost. Now it was her turn to ask questions. She set down her cup and looked right at me. "What about you, Jake? You seem like the kind of person who listens but never talks about himself. Why are you really here? Why'd you say yes to this blind date?" I leaned back in my chair. Funny how her honesty made it easier to be honest back. I grew up without much money. Not poor exactly, but close. My dad drove delivery trucks, worked overnight shifts. My mom worked at a department store, came home tired every single day. We got by, but there was always this feeling of being behind. Other kids got new bikes for their birthdays. I got my cousin's old one with the seat taped up. Other kids went to summer camp. I mowed lawns and saved up just to buy school supplies. That feeling stuck with me, like I'm always going to be the guy with the taped up bike. I drank some coffee, even though it had gone lukewarm. Dating never went well for me. Had a few girlfriends in my 20s, but they all ended the same way.
They'd say, "You're a good person, Jake, but..." And then came the reasons. "I don't have big dreams. I'm happy with a simple job and a small apartment. I don't want to climb any ladders or make lots of money or move to some big city." And after hearing that enough times, I just stopped trying. Started pulling away first because it hurt less than being left behind. So yeah, I hiked too, just in a different way. We both went quiet again, but this time the silence felt connected, like we'd found something we both understood without having to explain it. Ava looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "So why haven't you left? Most people would have been gone the second I showed them these." She touched her sleeve. I thought about it, really thought about it. Because you're the first person in forever who gets it. Not just surviving day by day, but trying to figure out how to actually live instead of just exist. And maybe I need to remember how to do that too. She nodded slow, taking in my words. Then she said quietly, "Okay." We talked more after that, but lighter stuff. She told me about her favorite coffee shop that wasn't this one. I told her about a job site where I accidentally cut power to an entire floor, and everyone thought it was a power outage. She laughed, a real laugh that made her whole face change. The coffee shop started emptying out, workers from offices heading home.
College kids packing up laptops. The barista started wiping down the counter. I checked my phone and realized we'd been sitting there for almost 3 hours. "We don't have to call this dating," I said. "No pressure or expectations or any of that. What if we just try being friends? Two people who don't want to vanish into the background alone." Ava's fingers drummed on the table while she thought. Then she smiled, smaller but genuine. "Yeah, I'd like that." We stood up and I insisted on paying. She argued but gave up when the barista looked impatient. Outside, the air was cool and slightly damp. Portland weather always ready to rain. We didn't hold hands or make promises about forever, but when we split up, her walking toward the bus stop and me heading to my truck, something felt different, like a door had opened that I didn't even know was closed. And for the first time in years, I wasn't scared to walk through it. 3 days passed before I texted her, not because I didn't want to talk, but because I kept typing messages and deleting them. Everything sounded too eager or too casual or just wrong. Finally, I just wrote, "Hope works not too crazy. Simple, safe." She answered an hour later with a picture, gray clouds filling the sky. The caption said, "Better than yesterday." That became how we talked. Short messages, random photos, nothing forced. A week later, she sent me a picture of a weird sculpture outside her work with the message, "Someone got paid to make this." I sent back a photo of tangled electrical wires in a wall with, "Someone got paid to wire this too, apparently." After 2 weeks of texting, I suggested meeting up. Not at a coffee shop this time, somewhere less formal. There's a park near my job site. Decent benches, decent sandwiches from the deli next door. Interested? She said yes. The park was small, squeezed between warehouses and the highway. Not pretty, but quiet. There was a pond that always looked slightly green and benches that faced it. I got there first with sandwiches and chips. She showed up 10 minutes later with 2 coffees in a cardboard holder. "Wasn't sure how you take it, so I got cream and sugar on the side," she said, sitting down next to me. We ate and talked about surface stuff. Her crazy week at the therapy center. My story about dropping a drill through drywall onto someone's desk below. She laughed and almost spit out her coffee, but slowly the conversation shifted deeper. She talked about her patients, how helping burn survivors gave her purpose, but also brought everything back. Every bandage change, every skin graft discussion reminded her of her own hospital months. "There's this kid, 7 years old, burned his hand on a stove," she said, staring at the pond. "His mom brings him twice a week. He cries during therapy because moving his fingers hurts, and I know exactly how it feels. Sometimes I have to step out of the room for a minute because it's too much." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. 2 weeks after that, she texted me late at night. Just 3 words. Rough shift. Walk. I met her at a waterfront trail 20 minutes later. Joggers passed by in reflective gear. Someone walked 3 dogs on leashes that kept tingling. Ava showed up in a hoodie with the sleeves pulled over her hands, even though it wasn't cold. We walked without talking at first. Finally, she said, "A coworker said something today. Not mean, just thoughtless. She said, 'You're so strong dealing with your past every day.' But the way she said it, I could tell she was thinking about my scars. How everyone probably whispers about them when I'm not around. Poor Ava, brave Ava, damaged Ava." Her voice cracked a little on the last word. "I hate it, Jake. The stares, the pity, the way some people look disgusted and try to hide it. I've had people move seats on the bus. Had a guy at a store ask if I was contagious. Every single day I have to decide if I'm going to cover up and sweat or show my arms and deal with the looks. And I'm so tired of making that choice." After she said that, she went quiet for 3 days. No texts, no pictures, nothing. I didn't push or demand answers. Just sent one message. "Here whenever you're ready." On day 4, she finally replied. "Sorry, can we take coffee? I'll explain." We met at a different place this time, smaller and less crowded.
She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't been sleeping. "I do this," she said before I could even say hello. "Pull away when things feel too real, when someone gets close enough to see the mess underneath. It's not fair to you, but I don't know how to stop." "You don't have to apologize," I told her. "I get it." "Do you, though?" She looked at me hard. "Because I'm always going to be like this. The scars aren't going away. The nightmares aren't going away. The fear that everyone's judging me isn't going away. That's a lot to deal with." "I've got my own stuff," I said. "Maybe not visible, but it's there. We all carry things." She seemed to relax a tiny bit after that. A month into our friendship, I told her about the volunteer project. "It's this weekend, community build for families recovering from accidents. We're putting in ramps and handrails, making houses easier to move around in. It's for a good cause. You should come." Her face went tight immediately. "I don't know. That's a lot of people, a lot of attention." "You don't have to," I said quickly. "Just thought I'd mention it." That night, I texted her. "If you decide to come, I'll stick with you the whole time. You won't be alone in it." Saturday morning came and I didn't expect to see her. Volunteers were already hammering and measuring when I pulled up. Then I saw her walking across the grass and my breath stopped. She wore a short-sleeved green shirt. Her scars were completely visible in daylight, those thick, twisted lines of healed burns running up her arm. She looked terrified, but she kept walking toward me anyway. "You came?" I said, probably smiling too big. "Don't make a big deal about it," she muttered, but she was smiling too. Some adults noticed her scars. Their eyes lingered for a second before they looked away, trying to be polite. But kids don't know polite. A group of them ran over, some with bandages or braces of their own. "Your arm looks like mine." A little girl held up her own bandaged hand proudly. "Ava's hose." Her eyes found mine, and I could see panic there. I nodded at her, trying to say without words that she could do this. She knelt down slowly. Her voice shook at first. "It does, doesn't it? I got hurt a long time ago. It hurt a lot, but I got through it." "Did you cry?" a boy asked. "Yeah, I cried," Ava admitted. "Crying's okay when things hurt." "How come they're bumpy?" another kid asked, reaching out to touch. Ava let them run their small fingers over the raised scars while she explained in simple words. "Sometimes when skin gets really hurt, it heals differently. It gets thick and bumpy, but it's still strong. Maybe even stronger than before." "Like a superhero?" the first girl asked, eyes wide. Ava laughed, actually laughed. "Yeah, kind of like that. Like a phoenix. You know what a phoenix is?" The kids shook their heads. "It's a bird that goes through fire and comes out even more amazing than before. The fire doesn't destroy it, it makes it special." The kids ate it up, started asking her to sign their casts and bandages like she was famous. When things wound down, she pulled me aside near a newly installed ramp. "I never thought I could do that," she said. Her voice was thick, like she might cry, but in a good way. "Show everything. Let people see. Let kids touch them. But you were there, and it made me feel like maybe I could try trusting people again, even though it scares me more than almost anything." I took her hand without thinking. Her skin was warm against mine. "I'm scared too, but I think we can figure this out together, however slow it needs to go." She squeezed her hand back and didn't let go for a long time. My phone buzzed during lunch break on a Tuesday. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Jake?"
A woman's voice asked. "Ava collapsed at work. She's at Providence Medical. She asked us to call you." I dropped my sandwich and ran to my truck. Rain pounded the windshield as I weaved through traffic, my heart hammering against my ribs. 20 minutes felt like hours. The hospital smelled like cleaning chemicals and fear. A nurse pointed me down a long hallway lined with rooms full of beeping machines. Ava lay in bed hooked up to wires and tubes. Her face looked gray under the bright lights. Dark circles hung under her eyes like bruises. She turned her head when I walked in. "You came," she whispered. Of course I came. I pulled a chair close and took her hand carefully, my thumb brushing over the scarred skin. "What happened?" She closed her eyes. "I worked 2 shifts back to back, didn't sleep much. Then this morning, one of my patients, a little boy, he reminded me so much of..." Her voice cracked. Couldn't breathe. Everything went black. The doctor came in wearing blue scrubs and tired eyes. She explained that Ava's body had shut down from exhaustion and stress. Her blood pressure had dropped dangerously low. They were keeping her overnight for observation and fluids. After the doctor left, Ava stared at the ceiling. Tears started sliding down her cheeks, slow at first, then faster. "I'm falling apart, Jake. I can't keep pretending I'm okay when I'm not." I squeezed her hand, then stopped pretending. She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Everyone always tells me how strong I am, how brave, but I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm drowning, and I've been treading water for 5 years, and I'm so tired of fighting. So rest," I said quietly. "Let someone else help keep you afloat for a while. What if you get sick of it?" Her voice shook. "What if you wake up one day and realize I'm too much work, too damaged?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. I thought about all the times I'd walked away from relationships before they got hard, all the times I'd convinced myself I wasn't worth the effort, so why bother trying? But sitting there in that cold hospital room with machines beeping around us, I knew running wasn't an option anymore.
I'm not going anywhere, I told her. Even on the days when it's hard, even when you're not okay, I'm staying right here. She cried harder then, her whole body shaking. I moved to sit on the edge of her bed and held her while she let it all out. The grief over losing everything in the fire, the nightmares that still haunted her, the crushing weight of survivor's guilt that followed her everywhere. She told me about the mornings she couldn't get out of bed, the panic attacks in grocery stores when someone brushed against her arm, the constant fear that she'd never be normal again. I didn't try to fix any of it. I just listened. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking her vitals and adjusting machines. I called my boss and told him I wouldn't be back for the rest of the week. He grumbled, but agreed. I texted Chris to let him know what happened. He offered to bring food, but I told him we were okay for now. That night, I slept in the chair beside Ava's bed. My neck cramped and my back ached, but I didn't care. Every time she stirred or made a sound, I woke up to check on her. Around 3 a.m, she reached for my hand in the darkness. "Thank you," she whispered. "For not leaving." "Never," I whispered back. The next few days blurred together. I stayed at the hospital during the day, only leaving to grab food or clean clothes from my apartment. I brought her books from the hospital gift shop and read out loud when she was too tired to hold them herself. Terrible mystery novels with ridiculous plots that made us both laugh at the absurd twists. On Thursday morning, the doctor cleared her to go home. I drove her back to her apartment slowly, taking every turn carefully like she might break. Inside, her place felt quiet and empty. Plants on the windowsill needed water. Mail piled up on the counter. She stood in her living room looking lost. "I don't want to be alone right now." "You're not," I said. "I'll stay as long as you need me to." We spent the afternoon on our couch. She curled up against my side while we watched old sitcoms on TV, the kind that don't require thinking. During commercial breaks, she talked more about the fire, details she'd never shared before, how the smoke tasted, the sound of glass breaking, the way flames moved like living things across the walls. "I dream about it every night," she admitted. "Different versions, but always the same feeling. Always too late to save anything." "Have you talked to anyone about it?" I asked like a therapist. She shook her head. "I tried once right after it happened, but sitting in an office talking about feelings felt pointless. What's done is done. Maybe it's not about changing what happened," I said carefully. "Maybe it's about learning how to live with it." She was quiet for a long time. Then she sat up and looked at me. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She led me down the hallway to a closed door I'd never seen open before. Inside was a small room filled with canvases stacked against the walls. Paintings covered every surface, swirls of red and orange that looked like flames, dark shadows with hints of light breaking through, hands reaching upward, covered in scars but still reaching. "I started painting after the fire," she explained. "It's the only way I can get the images out of my head." I walked around the room slowly, taking in each piece. They were raw and painful, but also beautiful in a strange way, full of emotion that words couldn't capture. "These are incredible," I said honestly. "They're just for me," she said quickly. "I've never shown anyone before." I turned to face her. "Why show me now?" She wrapped her arms around herself, pulling inward. "Because you asked why I don't talk to a therapist. This is my therapy. These paintings hold everything I can't say out loud, and if we're going to do this, if we're really going to try, then you need to see all of me, even the parts that aren't pretty." I stepped closer and took her hands in mine. "I see you, Ava, all of you, and I'm not scared." Summer arrived slowly that year. Like Portland itself wasn't quite ready to let go of the rain, but eventually the clouds cleared and warm days stretched longer. Ava started coming over to my apartment more often. We'd make dinner together in my tiny kitchen, bumping into each other while chopping vegetables and stirring pots on the stove. Nothing fancy, just pasta or stir-fry, but it felt like home. One Saturday morning in July, I woke up to find her already dressed, standing by the window with coffee in hand. "Let's go somewhere," she said. "I'm tired of these same 4 walls." We drove west toward the coast without any real plan. Windows down, radio playing old songs we both knew the words to. Ava wore a tank top, her scarred arm resting on the doorframe as wind whipped through her hair. She caught me looking and smiled. "Feels good," she said, not hiding anymore. We stopped at Cannon Beach, where massive rocks jutted out of the ocean like ancient giants. Families scattered across the sand, building castles and flying kites. We found a spot away from the crowds and spread out a blanket. The sun beat down warm on our shoulders while waves crashed steady and rhythmic in the background. Ava rolled up her pant legs and ran toward the water, laughing as cold foam rushed over her feet. I followed, splashing her until she shrieked and chased me back up the beach. We collapsed on the blanket, breathless and grinning. "I haven't felt this light in years," she said, staring up at the sky, "like I can finally breathe all the way." A little girl wandered over, holding a plastic bucket and shovel. She looked about 6, with blonde pigtails and a capped smile. She stared at Ava's arm with curious eyes. "What happened to you?" she asked bluntly. Her mother rushed over, looking horrified. "Emma, that's not polite." But Ava sat up and smiled at the girl. "I was in a fire a long time ago. It hurt really bad, but I got better." Emma tilted her head. "Did you cry?" "Yeah, I cried a lot," admitted.
But crying's okay when things hurt. The little girl nodded seriously, then held out her shovel. "Want to help me dig a hole?" Ava looked at me with raised eyebrows. I shrugged and smiled. We spent the next hour helping Emma dig the biggest hole she'd ever made, piling sand high around the edges. Her mother thanked us as they packed up to leave. Emma waved goodbye enthusiastically, already telling her mom about her new friends. "That was nice," I said after they'd gone. "You're good with kids." "They don't judge," Ava said softly. "They just see things as they are." 3 weeks later, I brought her to meet my mom. We drove east out of the city into farmland where I grew up. My childhood home sat at the end of a gravel driveway, surrounded by fields and old trees. Mom came out wiping flour from her hands onto her apron before we even parked. "You must be Ava," she said, pulling her into a hug immediately. "Jake talks about you constantly. Come in, I just made lemonade." Inside smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. Mom's kitchen looked exactly like I remembered from childhood. Same yellow curtains, same wooden table with mismatched chairs. We sat while Mom poured drinks and asked Ava about her work at the rehab center. "That must be rewarding," Mom said, cutting slices of pie. "Helping people heal." "It is," Ava agreed, "though some days are harder than others." Mom nodded knowingly. Jake's mother used to say the same thing about his trucking routes. Long hours, tough days, but worth it for the people depending on him. She didn't mention Ava's scars once, didn't stare or ask awkward questions, just treated her like family already. When we left hours later, full of pie and stories, Mom hugged Ava again at the door. "You're good for my boy," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "Don't let him push you away when things get hard. He has a habit of running before people can leave him first." Ava squeezed her back. "I'm not going anywhere." On the drive home, Ava was quiet. I glanced over and saw tears on her cheeks. "You okay?" I asked, concerned. She nodded and wiped her eyes. "Your mom didn't even ask about them. She just saw me." "That's because she knows what matters," I said, reaching over to take her hand. Back in Portland, we fell into a rhythm that felt natural and right. We started going to a support group for burn survivors that met twice a month in a community center downtown. Ava shared her story there with growing confidence each time. Other people listened and nodded, some crying, some smiling. They understood in ways most people couldn't. Inspired by those meetings, Ava started teaching art classes for kids dealing with trauma. She rented a small studio space and filled it with easels, paints, and canvases. Every Saturday afternoon, children came to transform their fears into colors and shapes on canvas. I helped set up supplies and clean brushes, taking photos of their proud creations to send home with parents. "You're pretty good at this assistant thing," Ava teased one afternoon, handing me a brush paint covered in blue. "I'm here for the free coffee," I joked back, though we both knew I'd be there regardless. My work on electrical sites continued steady. Long days pulling wire through walls and connecting circuits under gray skies. But now, when I finished, I drove to Ava's apartment, or she came to mine. We'd make dinner and talk about our days, simple routines that built something solid beneath us. One evening in early fall, we sat on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker on below. The air had turned crisp, carrying hints of winter approaching. Ava leaned against me, her scarred arm resting openly on mine, without hesitation or shame. "I used to think no one could love someone like me," she said quietly. "Not really, not with all this damage." I turned to look at her, and now she smiled. That real smile I'd fallen in love with. Now I know it just takes one person willing to stay. One person who sees past the surface every single day. I kissed her forehead gently. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to keep showing up for each other. We watched the sun disappear behind buildings together, painting the sky orange and pink. In that moment, everything felt exactly right. Not because we'd fixed all our problems or erased our pasts, but because we'd chosen each other, and we kept choosing each other every day. A year later, on a foggy morning, I took Ava back to the coffee shop where we first met. We sat at the same table by the window. I got down on one knee and pulled out a simple ring. "Will you marry me?" I asked. She said yes before I even finished the question, tears streaming down her face as I slipped the ring on her finger. 6 months after that, we got married in my mom's garden, surrounded by wildflowers. Ava wore a dress without sleeves, her scars visible in the afternoon sunlight. We'd both found what we'd been searching for all along, someone who saw past everything else, straight to the truth underneath. We weren't perfect, but together we were.